but it doesn't seem right.
Hi everyone, welcome to Ghost Talk. Harold St. John, founder of Toledo Ghost Hunters Society. Tonight I'm with Joe Shortridge again from 222 Paranormal Podcast. Joe's sitting in for Arizona Tramp tonight. Last minute, as I was telling you, Tramp had to give me a call. Tramp's got some family things going on. I was really looking forward to Tramp being on the show.
Me too.
But we would have started with Bigfoot and cryptos, and who God only knows where we would have ended up. So
I wanted to be back in the stands here watching.
Right. Tramp says he's going to come back on the show with us sometime real soon. So, Tramp, you promised me you would. I'm looking forward to it. So you're locked down to come on the show. Joe, I'm out of my element tonight.
Oh, me too.
But I'm tickled about this.
Arizona Tramp is watching you now.
Hi, Tramp. Welcome to the show. Joe, you and I haven't really discussed this too much in depth. I want to apologize for Katie. Katie is just crazy over Joe.
See?
I don't know why.
She loves cryptozoology also.
This is Joe's second or third week here doing the shows, and every time he comes over, Katie goes to him and claims to him. So it's something about it. I'm not sure. Anyways, this is off the beaten path for me. This, I told you just a little bit ago, I'm almost a little bit nervous, a little bit awkward about this, but I want to do it, and here's the reason why. From the time I was a little boy, obviously, I was fascinated with the paranormal, anything paranormal. At a very young age, I was able to document what I think was some paranormal activity, which at the time was all the proof I needed. But the search for a Bigfoot always intrigued me. And I was telling you out in the garage a few minutes ago, every Monster Quest, every show, Becky and I just watched a show a couple of weeks ago on pay-per-view that had a couple of doctors and PhDs. There was Dr. Jeff Meldrum, who's well respected in the field, and John Bindernickel, who just passed away this past week, were part of that show. And it took a whole scientific approach to searching for Bigfoot, trying to find if there was enough evidence to claim that this thing was real. And you know a lot more about this than me. I know you're going to talk about a lot of other things. Maybe you'll touch on, maybe Okopogo or a Loch Ness monster.
Yeah.
I like some of that. I was telling you once again. I kind of like the paranormal, scary things, like the Goat Man, maybe the Dog Man.
The Dog Man. Yeah.
Tell me so. Anyways, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
What do you know about cryptozoology?
First off, let me say, when I was in the paranormal stuff, I was more into like the UFO and stuff like that.
I also like that.
And once I started getting into more of the paranormal, I wanted to know the true evidence, because you always see these videos or a picture of a tree and there's an arm sticking out. Well, that's Bigfoot. That's good. Show me the real evidence.
Right.
Show me a clear photo. We have so many resources now to get a clear photo of Bigfoot, but yet nobody does. Until I started digging more and more, and there are.
Well, I was
dig more into it. It's not so much mainstream enough that where the news covers it and stuff like that, and when they do, they make a joke about it.
And that bothers me.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about cryptozoology. First off, it's the study of unknown animals. In a nutshell, that's what it is. And there's so many aspects of that. There's more aspects of that than there are of like ghosts and spirits, because there's everything from Bigfoot to rods to dogmen to fish. Well,
Joe, of all the hundreds of cryptids that are out there that we hear about, for me, it always goes back to Bigfoot.
Yeah.
I mean, Loch Ness Monster always kind of, I always found that really intriguing. Lake Champ was one of our local lakes here. That always kind of intrigued me. I was always stuck with like the Goat Man, or I think it was a Goat Man type ghost that I can't remember. I think it was in Oklahoma, but I can't even tell you for sure where it was. Where it would lure these teenagers up on the bridge, and I don't know, somehow put them in a trance. But either way, some people believe that the teens were jumping to their death. Others believe that this Goat Man was, chucking them off of this bridge. So much I think they shut the bridge down, and it's under constant security to make sure that these kids aren't doing it. So what is it? What is it that really really intrigues you? Is it like Bigfoot, or is there some other creature out there?
Well, it always goes back to Bigfoot.
For me as well.
Because it's, I mean, you think about Bigfoot as, you know, we think of it, oh, Bigfoot, he's in the woods of that, but it's worldwide. There's reports of a Bigfoot creature on every continent of the world.
Sure there is.
And there's hundreds, well, I have a few names here that I picked out, but there's hundreds of names for Bigfoot. You know, you've heard of Yeti, and
Audible Snowman,
the skunk ape and stuff, but I just picked out a couple funny ones. And I didn't find it, but down in Florida, they got some really good names for them too, which I didn't find. But the Baramaru,
I've never heard of
the
these.
Baramaru is from northwestern Pakistan.
Do they all mean the same thing? Are they all basically saying Bigfoot?
It's all the same Bigfoot creature. Now there are shorter and bigger, you know, different styles of Bigfoot, which people believe that those are just different races.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You got the Surasawa.
I've never heard of that
The
either.
Surasawa. That is from Turkey.
I had no idea.
And northern Mexico, they call it the same thing. The Chichi. Have you been to Chichis? Well, you've been to Bigfoots.
That's right.
The Chinese wild man.
Now, when you come up with those names,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously here in North America, you know, is where I think some of the greatest number of sightings have been, you know, not only captured but documented as well. I think somebody has a question for you right off the bat. Let's take it.
Okay.
Well, Jess was wondering, are you going to start incorporating field trip searches for these creatures into your schedule?
It's funny, Joe and I were talking, and we'll talk about this later on. It's a great question. Burr Oak, down by Logan, Ohio, outside of Logan, Ohio, the Nelsonville area, on Monster Quest a couple years ago. It was a show that was really well done. I mean, for those of you guys who are Monster Quest fans, the Ohio Grassman. I was just telling Joe earlier that these are people, the reports and the interviews these people were given, we can do stuff. These were real people that lived, I don't know if anybody's familiar with it. You pull off of 33, and there's a long road up north all the way to Burr Oak. It's funny, talk about paranormal stuff.
Mm-hmm.
On the way to Burr Oak, to the state park where the grassman had been, there's been 20-something sightings of the grassman in the last 4 or 5 years, is the little town of Gloucester, Ohio.
Okay.
And in our upcoming book, we have a story there that goes to Gloucester. So not only did we go looking for Bigfoot, we stopped to spend a weekend in a haunted cabin. So it was like a double treat for us. But yeah, that would be perfect. I keep threatening Joe that we're going to get together. We're going to go down for a grassman investigation for a long weekend. You know, but it's in the state park, so I mean, I don't know what rules are. And that was another thing. He said,
yeah,
there's homes there. These people had real homes there. They got to be on state park property. I don't know how that works.
I don't either.
You would think a state park is just state parks, but I should have did my research and maybe a little bit of better history on it. But I would imagine there's several thousand acres of woodland up there.
Oh yeah,
Plenty of habitat for them to live off of. You said something to me as well, talking to that. You know, is there food and water, resources that they can live on? The other thing, Joe, explain to me, because you did it really well the other day. Why aren't we finding, you know, any scat? Why aren't we finding these bones? You said something about a porcupine that intrigued me.
Mm-hmm. If you ask any park ranger or DNR official and that, they'll tell you that they don't even find bones of, now they'll find deer because it's so prevalent, but your big animals like bear.
Black bear would be, for one, that's very popular here in Ohio.
You don't find bones from black bear because what happens is when a creature dies in the woods, first you got the bugs, maggots, stuff like that eat the flesh and all that.
And that happens almost instantaneously.
Yeah, and other animals come in, they scatter the bones. But the big thing is there's animals out there like porcupine that will actually eat the bones.
I was not aware of that at all.
The body is completely taken care of.
I've also heard that they bury their dead. Is there any truth to that?
I don't know.
I've heard that this.
I know Tram's on. He mentioned it to me that they bury their dead,
and they mourn just like we do. I know elephants and other animals out in the wild, very high they're very emotional and they're very high functioning, and they do mourn and they do bury their dead, and that could have something to do with it. I was watching a show where this guy said he had believed that he shot a young Bigfoot.
Okay.
And I want to say it was in Tennessee, maybe. It had to be maybe Smoky Mountains area or something. By the time he went and got the park ranger and the authorities and came right back, which a couple hours had passed, the body was gone. And there was no traces. You would think there would have been some blood or something. I can't remember that when they interviewed him, a doctor had put him under hypnosis. And either it really happened to him or he believed it happened to him because he passed the lie detector test and everything. So that probably explains what other reasons, why aren't we finding evidence of this?
And that's it. We don't know. And that's the big mystery is why this has been going on for years. It's been going on for centuries to where people have seen Bigfoots all over the world and never finding a carcass, never finding anything true.
Well, listen, they're engaging in our show.
Yeah.
Do you know of anyone ever seeing more than one together? If they are emotional and bury their dead, do they travel and live together then?
I've heard that hundreds of times. I don't know if to call them a pack or what they're
more of a family.
But I've even seen Josh Gates from Destination Truth. I think he's a great, not only an explorer but an adventurer. I have a lot of respect for him. He himself on Destination Truth, and I think most people would know who I'm talking about. Here's the thing. Several people have proved that they travel in families. I want to call them families.
Yeah.
I don't want to say herds or packs.
No,
I want to call them family. But it's not like it was in the old days. Les Stroud's, Beard Gillis, the people that we all know that do these shows today have now taken some of their programs and they do it. Survivor Man would be one of them. He's been doing that for years and years. He has now taken a complete season, 6 shows, nothing but investigating the Bigfoot, and he has come out public and said he believes that it does exist, and he was one of them that said that he saw them in families. I think the one time he said there was 4 or 5 of them, and a smaller one, and I think they have a picture. I don't know if anybody's seen that picture, but they saw a young Bigfoot up by a tree with the family standing right there. It kind of blew me away. Even Josh Gates now, Joe, says he is going to dedicate some more of his shows to the researching of Bigfoot and Yeti. He spent a lot of time is it Tibet? Where would it be? Up in I can't remember the last show. Himalayas. He was up in the Himalayas, and Josh Gates made some. Well, he became quite famous a few months ago. He had found a track that was so isolated. It took them 4 or 5 days to get in there, and he found some really good tracks, and they brought it back, and they were documented and filmed, and he made a plaster casting of them, and he made national media for that. So well-respected people are now beginning to find some evidence that maybe something like this exists. You know what I still like though? I like the mystery.
Well, that's it. Yeah.
And I like the story. I love the stories. Will you share with us? You just told us about it, where Bigfoot was looking in a window.
Yeah.
Share that
that was
story.
Dogman.
Well, that was Dogman.
I heard a story of a little girl in a cabin that was yelling and screaming because there was something pounding on her window, and her room was in the 2nd story. And she opened the windows, and there was a dogman trying to get in. It was scratching at her windowsill.
Yeah, that's bipedal as well. Right?
Yes. And you're talking 7 to 8 foot tall. What, 600-pound dog?
That's a pretty big dog.
Yeah. And nobody believed her until they got a ladder up there and looked at her windowsill, and there were actually scratch marks on the windowsill.
See, and I count those things as documentation. I count those things as evidence. But it's also like the paranormal. If you can recreate it or you can debunk it, then you have to call it nothing more than a personal experience. Now, here's the fine line that we're walking. You're talking about 7, 8 feet in the air.
Yeah.
There's no known bears that tall there. Okay, well then what was it? Can you recreate it? Yeah, by fraud.
Yeah.
Can you debunk it? Yeah, you can say
even if it was a grizzly bear or whatever, they lived out there. They know what they look like.
Sure. more. I want us to, can we stay with Bigfoot for just a little bit?
Yeah, sure.
But I want to get into all these other things. So here we go.
That's it. The cryptozoology field is so vast.
I'm intrigued by all of it.
Mhm.
I can remember, I'm close to 60 now, just like, maybe a few years away. I can remember Patterson and Gimlin.
Mhm.
Do you remember that? They came out with what we would consider that was worldwide, the first, evidence, video evidence. I think I'm not even sure what they were doing, but they were on horseback, and it was by chance that they caught this thing. That film footage has been analyzed and reanalyzed and reanalyzed. I watched a really interesting show a couple of years ago where they took that piece of video and they broke it down, and they said, these were scientists that said it couldn't have been a person in a costume because of the way the muscles and the thighs and the way the body function was working. They were dumbfounded. They had no explanation. So you're beginning to hear these doctors and scientists, openly say there is, you can't recreate that. You can't. You can't debunk it. But they're still not going to say, oh my God, it has to be, it has to be a Yeti.
Yeah.
Why?
One of the big things about that film is when you watch it actually walk, it didn't walk like a human, walk straight-legged.
Right.
If you watch that video, and it actually is walking I don't want to say cross-legged, but it swings its legs as it walks. And that was another point.
I remember that they made, that was a strong point they made.
And back when that video was actually come out, there was costume makers and that could make costumes, but not of that quality.
Yeah, but that was,
and
that costume would have been 30 years before its time.
Exactly.
Well advanced.
Because a lot of people could have made a costume of a Bigfoot, but in order to get the muscle tone to move and it's almost like they had to have a skin suit, but yet fill it with hair, which they didn't have the technology to do.
No way did they have the technology. Another person, I'm throwing out names like I know these people, but me being such a skeptic in the world of paranormal, I'm kind of the same way with Bigfoot and anything in the cryptozoology. I want to hear from well-respected people, people that's had years of study in sciences and things. Jeff Meldrum from Idaho State, he has a PhD. He even now has his own small museum where he has collected cats from around the world. He's even now openly saying he doesn't want to say Bigfoot.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to say Yeti, but he says there is a very good possibility that there is some type of bipedal ape out there that's yet to be discovered, because there's got to be something to this. These things could not be fraud. These things have to be real. I trust guys like that, and I kind of, I don't know, it gives me a warm feeling inside when I'm listening to a guy like that say, hey, wait, it's possible. And it's like, yes, okay, we're getting closer. I can't wait till the day that we have, unfounded evidence of it. So, Joe, somebody else has a question for you.
What about Chupacabra? What do you guys think about that?
Besides goat sucker. Besides the one I saw, and probably Monster Quest as well, in Mexico, a police officer had a dash cam and filmed this thing.
Yeah.
Do you remember that? I don't know much about them. You're going to have to help us here, Joe.
That's another one I don't really know much about, but it all goes back to almost a Dogman type thing where it's a subset of the same style of creature. One interesting thing about that is they're smaller, they're hairless, they have the face and the nose of a donkey, I would say, the ears of a deer, so they got those big ears. But one thing too is a lot of your farmers back when these were occurring, they'd be out checking on their chickens and stuff. They'd be fine. They'd go inside. They'd hear some screaming. They come outside, and all the chickens be dead.
I've heard that.
Just that fast. So, but I really don't know much about Chupacabra.
Is it isolated to Mexico, or is it all over the world?
No, they've seen them in Arizona. They've seen them in Maine.
I'd say I wasn't even aware of that.
Yeah.
For some reason, I always thought it was down Mexico.
It's more prevalent down there, and that's where they get the name from.
Well, when this police officer, when she had this thing videotaped, you would think that she was well respected, that people would believe her, but I can remember that even she was criticized over that. And then some of the people were coming out saying it was maybe from the wolf family or coyote family with mange. And I mean, there was more excuses for why that thing was captured on video than, then what is the truth? And, and why and how did it get there? Does that make sense?
One of the things that, if you, and with you listening or watching, look up a bear with no hair. Okay?
That would be scary.
A bear with no hair. That looks a lot like a chupacabra. But the problem is bears have the short nose. They have the small ears. Their claws are a little different. The chupacabra has a bear has more wide claw.
This thing looked like a deranged coyote to me.
And their paws are different. But I really don't know the history in that on those. Well, to cover it that much.
As we're talking about Bigfoot and and other creatures, I like to call them monsters because it makes me feel better. I did want to say again, the Canadian biologist, Dr. John Bindernagel, passed away this week. This guy has spent his entire life, and he was the utmost skeptical for years and years and years. But he has dedicated the second part of his life to, open-mindedness. It's kind of like we do with the paranormal, open-minded skepticism. And even him in his last couple of years, it's going to be hard to tell because he's passed away now, but even he has opened up that, my God, there is a possibility here, that we shouldn't be so closed-minded, that so much of our oceans are yet undiscovered, but so much of our land is undiscovered. And this one thing I was telling a guy earlier, I can remember a story. I watch a lot of National Geographic, and I'm crazy about shows like that as well. 5 or 6 years ago, they discovered a new species of apes in Congo. And the funny thing was, after the fact, I asked myself, how would they just stumble into something like that? It didn't happen that way, Joe. These scientists they have spent the last 20 to 25 years getting and gathering reports that these apes existed. They couldn't find any evidence of it. Bones, a scat, hair. They couldn't find nothing. There was no proof whatsoever that this new species of apes even existed. And then 5 or 6 years ago, by chance or by luck, after hundreds of reports from the different tribes that lived in that area that were making reports and they saw these things, they were real, they stumbled into them. And lo and behold, science has got an A+ for the day. These scientists did a great job. The bottom line to me is everybody saying it wasn't true. These weren't real. There's no way. This is 2018. This can't happen. And yet it did. And now we found, and I think they're similar to the silverbacks. I can't remember the whole details, but the bottom line is, if you watch these nature shows, you'll find out all the. Do you remember these on these ships? Just a couple hundred years ago, they were talking about these big monster squids. And they showed them as sea serpents, and they were scary looking in all the books and stuff. Well, wasn't it just 20 years ago they discovered the giant squid, that it absolutely existed? So all these thousands of reports and all these books that we all said it was just scary bedtime stories, it's all came to pass. It's all become the truth. Could this happen with some of these trips that we're talking about?
You think about this. Let's think about like the Loch Ness Monster and stuff like that.
Which I like as well.
You think of an animal that has been extinct for millions of years. There's no way that this thing could be around. Okay? How can something survive for millions of years without being seen? Okay? Now, I don't remember how many years ago, but there's a fish called a coelacanth that has been extinct for millions of years. People are finding them. If you go online, you'll see it's a blue fish, about this big, has legs. It is supposedly extinct for millions of years, but yet they're finding them in the oceans. I know the Cryptozoology Museum in Washington, he's got one stuffed on his wall. But you guys can search it up on anything. Just type in cedar camp and it'll come up. So you don't know. I mean, these things can be totally extinct, but we don't know that.
We was also talking earlier in Lake Erie. Just this, I don't have a time frame. Beck's having some technical difficulty. Are you plugged in, Beck?
Here, I don't.
Should be plugged in, ready to go. Maybe a bad extension cord or something. She's going to work on that.
Yeah.
5 or 6 years ago, or it could have been longer. Now time passes by so fast. In Lake Erie, I have an old cabin out there, and before we get off, I want to tell a short story.
Okay.
I hope you got a scary story.
Oh, I guess.
You'll tell your story first, and I'll tell mine second. Some of the fishermen up there, you got to remember this cabin sits back a couple of miles off the road, and it's surrounded by the western basin of Lake Erie, so there's some wooded area, some creeks that run through there. Out in Lake Erie, some of the locals up there, who I'm friends with, were seeing this monstrous looking thing in Lake Erie when they're out on their boat, and they were saying, it was, and I think we all exaggerate.
Yeah.
Oh, it was huge. It was 15 feet tall.
And that big.
Yeah. And that went on for a complete summer or two. And then we started hearing more and more reports of it on the weekend. The weekend that we had the big sighting was not so far out in front of my particular cabin, but I wasn't there, so I didn't get to see it. But they swore it was real.
Yeah.
The Lake Erie monster. I know these people wouldn't lie. Some of these people I've grown up with them. I know them. Lo and behold, it was like a month or two later in Fremont, which is about 12 or 15 miles south of where the cabin is. What do you call it? A sturgeon had come up to the surface and got caught in the Fremont Dam, by the Fremont Dam, and they said it was 8 or 10 feet long. I can't remember but isn't it funny? Even locally, people were seeing something. The elders up there saying, "You're all drinking too much beer, you're partying too much on the weekends. Stay off the lake, and don't be driving your boats out there. You're drinking too much." And just a couple of weeks later, lo and behold, a sturgeon was brought. So what they were seeing was real. These weren't just these were true stories, eyewitness reports of it, and it came to pass. So I want to touch a little bit. Me, paranormal ghosts. I want to touch on the scary side, or so maybe the darker side. You said you had a story, and I want to hear it.
Bigfoot wise, okay. Met a gentleman that lived in Lambertville, which is, I don't want to say close to here, but around this area.
It's 3 miles away. It's 3 miles west.
Okay. 1974. He was a young boy, probably high school age. And him and his buddy were walking through the woods, which are now housing developments, and he came across a Bigfoot. He said that all of a sudden they turned, and there was a Bigfoot standing in front of him. And his buddy, who is the macho football player, actually froze up and was standing there, and he took off. And noticed his buddy wasn't behind him. Well, he turned around, and he's like, "I got to go back." So he went back to get him. And his buddy was standing there. He said he was red from head to toe and just in a trance, just staring. And he had to actually shake him and wake him up. Froze with fear. And for him to have a Bigfoot sighting 3 miles from here is just amazing. And that was back in 1974, so that wasn't that long ago.
Has there been any sightings since then? Is it
not in this area?
Has anybody reported it?
But in Michigan, it's very big. Ohio, Pennsylvania. There's been sightings right up to, I know of, a couple of days ago, there was a sighting in Ohio. I'm not sure the exact area. But I know last year when me and Jen went up to St. Ignace, there was actually a sighting 3 days before we got there, not even 10 miles from where we're at. So we did take a drive. We did go to that area, but we couldn't find anything, obviously. But there are sightings locally that people are talking about.
I think it would just really be cool to go hiking up in the woods I've learned by watching TV. I really have no hands-on experience. I don't even know what they call them. When they take all the trees and they pile them up into like a teepee, I've noticed that some of the trees have been turned the other way, not just uprooted and pushed over, but actually pulled straight out of the ground and flipped over. What do they call those things?
That I don't know.
And they find grass mounds a lot where they could be spending some time in like a bedding thing.
Down, yeah.
So there's a lot of signs that there's either Bigfoot or some other type of creatures that would be easy for us to look for. There's also a darker side. I don't know if you remember. It's pretty popular. You guys can Google it. In Russia, February 1959, Mike Lebecki did a show on this, where it was 6 or 8, maybe 9 college students in Russia.
Oh yeah.
Went exploring, and they never returned. The show really was. This is all documented proof. There were some cover-ups, and they weren't letting all the files become public till I think just recently in the last year or two, because I think the Russian government wanted to, keep some of it out of the public's eye. But they had broken ribs. One had its eyes punched out. They said that the last evidence they found was the big tent that they were in, and they said there were slits in the tent as if somebody was cutting through so they could peek out. They had found their cameras with some rolls of film in it, and one of them maybe captured this thing that was, I don't know, 8 or 10 feet tall, and it clearly looked like some type of a Bigfoot to me. But this is a documented record of 9 college students going out in Russia, and all 9 of them were murdered. They had left their safety of their tent, some of them without shoes on, so they were running from this tent in fear. Something was definitely coming after them, and the wood line was probably a mile down these slopes. I don't know it's got to be pretty difficult to be running shoeless in 3 or 4 feet of snow trying to get cover of the woods. I mean, they were trying to get out of the opening, somewhere where they could take cover. But all 9 students were gruesomely murdered. Some of them ripped apart and they were frozen in the ground. They found them, I think, a few weeks later with no explanation. But the one thing I got from that, as they said, is it wasn't humanly possible to do that to 9 students. One person couldn't have done this. Yeah. 10 people couldn't have done this. They would have fought back. Instead, all 9 of them ran in fear the other way. They didn't even stick around to fight. Now, some of them looked like they could have been in a struggle at the site they were frozen. What do you make of that? And is that just an isolated case of maybe a Bigfoot or a Yeti or some type of monster type of would do that?
Well, a couple of things you want to think about.
And why? Why?
It
didn't eat them, Joe.
No, if it would have been a grizzly bear, at least some of them would have got away.
Absolutely.
Because for one thing, now you're talking speed, because 8 of them are running in different directions or running away. A grizzly would grab one and then be done.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more.
One thing that you want to know, or one thing also is, they found that southern Ohio area Bigfoot.
Grassman.
Yeah, they're more aggressive. People have seen them carrying off deer, have seen them carrying off dogs.
I've heard that. Break their neck, even maybe even take a chunk out of them.
There's a story I heard just a couple of days ago when we interviewed a gentleman on our show, and after the show we were talking Bigfoot instead of ghost. But he mentioned that he saw a story where a lady was feeding this family of Bigfoot, and the neighbors were shooting at it with gun, 22s, which won't do anything. And the one morning they woke up and the neighbors' dogs were all dead, and this lady's dogs were left alone. So, like we were talking earlier about compassion.
Maybe they're just much smarter than what we're giving them.
I think so.
Well, they have to be. I mean, they're very elusive. I've always wondered. Do you have a question?
Yeah, Jess is asking if you can post something about the where a link to that story about those college kids
Mhm.
because she's never heard about it.
Yeah, it was